For 7 months, she cleaned his floors. But that night, she walked into his penthouse as the most powerful woman in the room. The problem? He was the one who invited her as a joke. He laughed when he slid the invitation under the supply closet door. His lieutenants laughed too, the kind of laughter that bounced off expensive walls and told you everything about the people producing it. The cleaning lady, one of them, managed, nearly losing his grip on his glass. "Boss, that's cruel." Shin Tae-yang watched the woman through the floor-to-ceiling window of his office, on her knees in the corridor, scrubbing tile with the focused, unhurried attention of someone who intended to finish what she started, and felt something he couldn't immediately name. Not cruelty, exactly. Something more like curiosity, wearing cruelty's clothes. He didn't laugh. He just watched. Dani Okafor found the envelope wedged between her mop bucket and a bottle of industrial cleaner at the end of her Tuesday shift. Gold seal. No name on the outside. The address inside she recognized immediately. The Haedong Tower, 40 floors of glass and controlled silence overlooking Busan's waterfront, the kind of building where the air itself seemed to have signed a non-disclosure agreement. Penthouse level. Saturday, 8 p.m. She read it twice, set it on the kitchen table of her small rented apartment, and ate her dinner looking at it. Rice and stew she'd made from the groceries she bought every Sunday. The same groceries, the same meal, the same table. The gold envelope sat there looking like it had arrived from a different world, which it had. She thought about throwing it away. She thought about it for about 4 seconds. Then she smiled, slow, private. The smile of a woman who had been underestimated so many times. She had developed a specific fondness for the moment when the people doing it began to understand their error and went to make tea. Saturday, she thought. Okay then. The Haedong Tower on a Saturday night was Busan's skyline performing its best version of itself. Guests arrived in vehicles that cost more than most people's homes. Women wore jewelry that had its own insurance policies. Men wore the particular expression of people who were powerful and wanted everyone in the room to register it without appearing to want that. Security at the entrance operated with the efficiency of a process that had been refined through many iterations. Shin Tae-yang stood at the center of his penthouse in a charcoal suit with no tie, a glass of whiskey he had not touched, receiving the city's elite with the warmth of a man who had invited them because they were useful and would release them when they weren't. He was 36 years old, and he had built the kind of empire that made other powerful people careful about how they said his name. He was not a man who was surprised by things. His right hand, Sungwoo, appeared at his shoulder. Everyone's accounted for. Should I pull the cleaner's invitation? She obviously. The room shifted. It was subtle at first, the specific quality of attention that moved through a crowd when something happened that nobody had a script for. Conversations paused mid-sentence. Heads turned. Security at the entrance. Men Tae-yang had selected personally for their imperviousness to distraction, stepped aside. Not because they had been instructed to, because she walked toward them like stepping aside was simply the reasonable response. Tae-yang turned. Dani Okafor walked into his penthouse like the room had been designed to frame her, and she had arrived to confirm the designer's vision. The dress was deep midnight blue, structured at the shoulders, falling to the floor in a line so precise it looked architectural, diamonds sewn into the fabric catching every light source in the room simultaneously, as if she had arrived wearing the Busan night sky and brought it inside with her. Her head was level. Her expression was composed, almost amused, the expression of a woman who knew exactly what she had walked into and found it interesting rather than intimidating. A whisper moved through the room like a current. Who is she? Sungwoo's tablet hit the floor. He left it there. Tae-yang's whiskey glass stopped moving. Their eyes met across 40 feet of the most powerful gathering in Busan. She smiled at him, not warmly, not nervously, deliberately. The smile of a woman who had done a thing on purpose and was prepared to own every consequence of it. He set his glass down with great care so that nobody would see that his hand was not completely steady. Find out who she is, he said to Sungwoo, without moving his lips. Everything. Now. Sungwoo moved. Across the room, Dani accepted a glass of champagne from a passing server, took a measured sip, and began moving through the crowd with the ease of someone who had attended 1,000 rooms like this one. An ambassador laughed too loudly at something she said. A man who ran 3 technology companies adjusted his collar when she glanced in his direction. A politician touched his watch. What is happening? Tae-yang thought, with the specific unsettlement of a man watching the variables in a situation rearrange themselves without his input. Sungwoo returned in under 5 minutes, which was a record for anything. Her name is Dani Okafor, he said. His voice had taken on the quality of a man delivering information he was still processing. Nigerian-American. From Lagos originally, grew up partly in Houston. She's been cleaning this building for 7 months. A pause. Her registered address in the United States is a private estate outside Houston. 42,000 square feet. Another pause. Her last disclosed net worth. Sungwoo lowered his voice to something barely audible. $2.1 billion. The silence between them had weight. She has been mopping our floors, Tae-yang said, with the specific precision of a man repeating something back to confirm he had heard it correctly. Voluntarily, sir. Yes. For 7 months. Yes, sir. Tae-yang looked across the room at Dani Okafor, who chose that precise moment to glance back at him over her champagne glass and raise it slightly. A small, elegant gesture. Cheers. He crossed the room. He didn't make a decision to do it. His feet simply moved, as if they had received instructions from somewhere that bypassed the usual chain of command. Ms. Okafor. He stopped beside her, keeping his voice measured, controlled, the voice he used for negotiations. She turned to face him fully. Up close she was more infuriating than she had been at a distance, warm-eyed, composed, with the expression of a person who found life genuinely interesting and was prepared to be entertained by whatever happened next. Mr. Shin. She said his name with the ease of someone who had known it for some time and had been waiting for the appropriate moment to use it. Lovely party. You know who I am. I've cleaned your building for 7 months. A brief pause. I know where everything is. Something moved through him. Cold, careful, alert. Then you know the invitation was a joke. She tilted her head. I suspected, yes. And you came anyway. Of course. She sipped her champagne with complete serenity. I never miss a good entrance. He looked at her. She looked back, entirely unbothered, in the way of someone for whom being unbothered was not a performance, but a settled fact. His usual approach to situations that required management, cold efficiency, polite removal, the specific social pressure of a man whose displeasure had consequences, dissolved completely because she was not performing hurt, was not angry, was not waiting for an apology. She had walked into his joke wearing $2 billion and was treating him like he was the entertainment. Why do you clean? He asked. It came out less controlled than he intended. She was quiet for a moment, studying him with eyes that were doing something more than looking. Why do you assume I shouldn't? She replied. It was not an answer. It was more useful than one. A commotion near the entrance, a late arrival creating the minor friction that late arrivals to rooms like this always created, pulled his attention for 30 seconds. He handled it with a word to Sungwoo, returned to find Dani watching Busan's waterfront through the window with the expression of someone who had been waiting patiently and was in no hurry. He placed her at table 1. Sungwoo noticed. Sungwoo said nothing. Sungwoo was learning. Dinner was 12 courses and 6 languages, and the specific performance of a room full of people who were powerful and had decided to be civilized about it for one evening. Tae-yang sat at the head of his table and found his attention moving, with a consistency that irritated him, 2 seats to his left. Dani ate with the ease of someone who had eaten in rooms like this many times and had also eaten in rooms nothing like this, and found both experiences equally ordinary. She spoke Korean to the man on her left with the fluency of someone who had learned it properly rather than adequately. She laughed at something the woman across from her said, a real laugh, unperformed, the kind that escaped rather than being released. You speak Korean, he said, when the table noise provided enough cover for a private exchange. Busan has a significant Nigerian community, she said. I've been coming here since my 2nd year of university. The language made things easier. She paused. And I've always found it beautiful. University where? Columbia. She said it the way people said the name of a street they lived on. Completely, without theater. He set his chopsticks down. You have a degree from Columbia, a $2 billion estate, and you have spent 7 months cleaning my building. I know. She met his eyes without flinching. Why? She was quiet for long enough that he thought she had decided not to answer. Then, my mother cleaned offices. Her voice didn't break, but something in its texture shifted, became more careful, the way you became more careful around things that were still tender. Her whole working life. For buildings, 6 days a week for 28 years. She used to tell me, Dani, you can't really know something until you've done it with your hands. A small pause. She died 14 months ago. I sold my second company 3 months after the funeral, made more in one day than she had made in her entire career, and I didn't know what to do with that. I didn't know how to sit inside that. She looked at her glass briefly. So I came back to where she started. To understand it. To finish understanding her. The table continued around them, conversations and cutlery, and the ambient performance of important people at dinner. Between the two of them, something had gone completely still. Tae-yang thought about his own mother. A small woman with enormous pride who had worked in a restaurant kitchen for 15 years while he ran the streets at 16 and 17, who had never known the shape of what he eventually built, who had died before he could show her that the thing he had become was worth something. He had never told anyone that. He was thinking it now in the middle of a dinner party because a woman he had invited as a joke had just described something he recognized. She sounds remarkable, he said. Quietly. Simply. Dani looked at him with the specific quality of attention she had been withholding until this moment, the look of someone who had found what they were actually looking for beneath the surface of what was visible. She was, she said. After dinner the party moved to the rooftop. Busan spread below in the way that Busan always spread below from this height. The harbor lights, the bridges, the dark water between the city's peninsulas catching and returning light in fragments. The sky was the particular deep violet of a clear coastal November night. Dani stood at the railing with her shoes off, bare feet on the cold marble, her champagne held loosely in one hand. Tae-yang had shed his jacket somewhere between the elevator and the railing, which was not something he typically did at his own events, and appeared beside her without entirely meaning to. Your security team has been following me with their eyes all evening, she said without turning. Occupational reflex. One of them walked into a column near the bar. A pause. Shin-woo had to catch him. I wasn't watching that particular. You absolutely were. She turned to look at him, and the smile on her face was the most unguarded thing he had seen all evening, full and unheld. Something in his chest did something it had no prior authorization to do. You're not what I expected, he said. You expected a joke, she replied simply. Yes. He looked at her directly. I apologize for that. She studied his face with the same evaluating attention he used on people he was trying to understand, looking for the construction behind the surface, the gap between what was said and what was meant. Whatever she found, it was enough, because her shoulders relaxed by a fraction. I've been underestimated since I was 22 years old, she said. By professors who thought my admission was a mistake, by investors who took meetings with me as a courtesy, by partners who assumed my success had a silent architect. She looked back at the harbor. You're not even in the top 5. That's either a significant reassurance or a profound humiliation. Both, she said, and the smile came again sideways. They stood in a silence that had stopped being uncomfortable some time earlier and become something else. Charged, comfortable. The silence of two people who were very aware of each other and had stopped pretending otherwise. Same time next week, she said finally. He raised an eyebrow. I still have the East Corridor to finish. Perfectly straight-faced. He laughed. It came out sudden and genuine and surprised him completely, which was an experience he did not have frequently. Sung-woo, watching from across the rooftop, went very still with the expression of a man witnessing something he had not seen before and wanted to document, but had no mechanism for documenting. Then Sung-woo appeared at his shoulder with a face that meant business, and not the pleasant kind. The Daegu connection intercepted our shipping communications, he said quietly. The Incheon arrangement is compromised. The warmth left Tae-yang's face. Not dramatically. It simply withdrew. The way a tide withdrew, revealing the harder geography underneath. He turned to Bella. She had already seen the shift. She was watching him with clear eyes, the particular alertness of someone who understood what a change of register meant in a man like him. "You have to go," she said. "Not a question. This world." He stopped, started differently. "You shouldn't be in it." Her expression cooled. Not to anger, to something more precise. "You invited me into it. As a mistake. As a joke," she said. "And now that you've understood I'm not a joke, you're asking me to leave." Her voice was quiet and exact. "I didn't ask for your protection, Tae-yang. I know. I'm offering it anyway. That's not generosity." The words were measured, unhurried, more damaging for being delivered without heat. "That's control, dressed as concern." His jaw tightened. Hers did too. Two people who had spent their lives not backing down, facing each other on a rooftop above a city that had no opinion about either of them, both of them right about something and neither of them finding the door to the space where both of them could be right simultaneously. "My car will take you home," he said. "I have my own car." She picked up her shoes. "I've always had my own car." She walked to the elevator. The doors opened, admitted her closed. Tae-yang stood at the railing where she had stood barefoot 10 minutes ago and looked at Busan's harbor and thought about the word she had used. Control. He had built 15 years of empire on the precise application of control and had never had the word make him feel the way it made him feel right now, which was like someone had identified a structural flaw he hadn't known was there. Sung-woo appeared beside him. "Don't," Tae-yang said. Sung-woo closed his mouth. He handled the Taegu situation in 4 days. It required precision and patience, and the kind of multi-layered problem-solving that had made him the last man standing in a dozen disputes over 15 years. Ordinarily, this kind of work consumed him fully, every hour occupied, every thought engaged, no space for anything that wasn't tactical. This time his mind kept finding its way back to bare feet on cold marble, to the word control delivered without drama, which somehow made it worse than drama would have. To a woman who had walked into his joke wearing the night sky and sat at his table and told him about her mother. On the 5th morning, Sung-woo placed a folder on his desk. "She terminated her cleaning contract," he said, in the tone of a man choosing each word with individual care. "Effective 3 days ago." Tae-yang looked at the folder. "Also," Sung-woo continued, "she's been invited to keynote the Busan International Economic Forum. The announcement went up yesterday. She's listed as Dani Okafor, founder, Forbes Africa list philanthropist." A brief pause. "The dress from Saturday. I looked it up. Custom couture. The valuation. I know what it's valued at." Silence. Tae-yang stood and went to the window. Busan Harbor in the morning, the same view he had looked at every morning for 7 years, the water and the bridges and the city going about its business, without reference to his feelings about any of it. She had come to his party, knowing it was a joke. She had sat at his table like she had always sat there. She had told him about her mother, and he had told her nothing, and she had seen him anyway, past the suit and the composure and the 15 years of architecture he had built around himself, and she had looked at him like she recognized something. And he had sent her home. "Sung-woo." "Sir." "The Economic Forum. Where is she staying?" Sung-woo's professional composure developed a crack that expressed itself as a very brief smile. "I took the liberty of finding that out yesterday, sir." "Of course you did." "The Grand Josian. She's speaking at 2 p.m. Forum lobby at 1:30. Tae-yang picked up his jacket. "Tell no one." "Understood, sir." He paused at the door. "Especially not the man who walked into the column." "That incident," Sung-woo said with perfect gravity, "has been removed from all records." The Busan International Economic Forum occupied the Grand Josian's main conference space, a glass-ceilinged hall full of the specific energy of ambitious people trying to look like ambition was incidental to them. The lobby before the afternoon sessions was crowded with the kind of crowded that meant everyone was someone, and was aware that everyone else was also someone. Dani stood near the window in an ivory blazer, reviewing something on her tablet with a focused attention she brought to everything, The same attention she had brought to scrubbing tile in the east corridor of the Haedong Tower 7 months ago, and the same attention she had brought to walking into his penthouse on Saturday, and the same attention, he now understood, she brought to everything she decided was worth doing. She heard the room shift before he reached her. He had noticed at the party that she always heard the room shift. She didn't look up from her tablet. "You terminated your contract," he said. "I finished what I came to do," she replied, still reading. He stopped beside her. No Sung-woo. No security. For a man who did not move through the world unaccompanied, the absence of accompaniment was its own statement, and she registered it. He saw her register it in the fractional pause before she looked up. "I sent you home," he said. "You did." "I was wrong." She looked up from the tablet then, slowly, with the measuring quality of someone who had been told things before and had learned to check them for load-bearing cracks before trusting them with weight. "I've spent 15 years, he said, building walls and calling it strength. He held her gaze. "You walked through all of them in approximately 4 hours. I didn't know how to manage that. So I did what I do when I don't know how to manage something." He paused. "I controlled it. I'm aware of how that sounds." She studied him. "You should have said that on the rooftop." "Yes." Instead of the whole, she gestured briefly, the gesture of a woman indicating an entire category of behavior she had encountered before and had a name for. "I must protect the delicate woman from my dangerous world performance." "It was insufferable," he said. Profoundly. A beat of silence. "I have 30 minutes before I go on," she said. "I know. I have a seat in the front row." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "You bought a ticket to the Economic Forum." Sung-woo bought it. "I simply—" A pause, during which he appeared to locate his dignity and decide to proceed anyway, attended. The smile came the way good things came when they were real, not all at once, but building from something genuine, warming her whole face. Unguarded. Unheld. "There's a dinner," she said. "After the afternoon sessions. Speakers and guests." "I'm aware. It's not a joke invitation this time." She said it simply, without accusation, just establishing the terms. "No," he said. "It isn't." She held out her hand. Not to shake. Open. An offer. The gesture of someone extending something they were prepared to take back if it wasn't met correctly. He took it. Below the glass ceiling of the Grand Joseon, Busan went about its afternoon. The harbor traffic, the bridges, the city's relentless and indifferent forward motion. 40 floors above it. 2 nights ago, a woman had stood barefoot on cold marble and told him something true about herself, and he had looked at it and been frightened by it and handled his fear the way he handled everything, with control, and she had named it perfectly. He was not going to make that mistake twice. The lobby moved around them, important people going to important places. But for a moment in the middle of it, 2 people stood still. The woman who had cleaned his floors to understand her mother, who had arrived at his party in the night sky, who had told him the truth and then listened for the truth back and found it eventually when he had gathered enough courage to offer it. And the man who had invited her as a joke and had spent 5 days sitting with the specific discomfort of someone who had done something small and discovered, too late, that it revealed something large. Neither of them was a joke. Neither of them had ever been. If this story found you, drop a comment and tell me what you thought, and tell me, would you have shown up to that party? Like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs a reminder that the person everyone overlooks is sometimes the one carrying everything. Stay beautiful. See you in the next one.